Picture this: a beautiful summer afternoon in an upscale suburban neighborhood in Houston. David Turner, a former police officer with 15 years of service, is finally living his dream. After years of saving every penny and working countless overtime shifts, he has managed to buy his dream home, a stunning two-story estate with a crystal-clear swimming pool that sparkles under the Texas sun. But his moment of peace is about to be shattered. As David reclines in his lounge chair, eyes closed, enjoying the warm breeze, the sharp wail of police sirens cuts through the tranquility. Two patrol cars screech to a halt in front of his house. The officers, hands on their holsters, approach his fence. "Sir, we've received a report of a suspicious individual trespassing in this pool area." David sits up, a familiar knot forming in his stomach. He knows exactly who made that call. Through the corner of his eye, he catches a glimpse of his neighbor, Linda Parker, peeking through her curtains with a smug smile on her face. This isn't the first time she's pulled something like this, but little does she know, it's about to be her last. Let's take a step back to where it all began. 2 months earlier, David had just moved into his new home, feeling an immense sense of pride. After years of protecting and serving, he had finally achieved what his parents could only dream of: owning a home in one of Houston's most prestigious neighborhoods. The previous owners had maintained the property beautifully, but what truly sold him was the backyard pool, a perfect retreat from the scorching Texas heat. As he was arranging his patio furniture, he noticed her for the first time. Linda Parker, standing at her second-floor window, phone pressed against her ear, staring at him intently. David waved politely, but she quickly disappeared behind her curtains. The next day, while David was at the hardware store, his security camera pinged. There she was, strolling through his unlocked back gate, as if she owned the place. Wearing a designer swimsuit and carrying an expensive beach towel, she casually placed her things on one of his lounge chairs before dipping her feet into his pool. When David returned and confronted her, Linda's reaction was unforgettable. "Oh," she gasped, placing a hand to her chest in feigned surprise. "I thought you were the new pool maintenance guy. The previous owners always let me use their pool." Her condescending smile made David's blood boil, but years of police training had taught him to stay calm. "Ma'am, I'm not the maintenance guy. I'm the new owner," David replied professionally. "And I'd appreciate it if you'd ask permission before entering my property." Linda's face twisted in disbelief. "You're the owner?" she scoffed. "There must be some mistake. I know the realtor who handled this property, and she never mentioned." She gestured vaguely at him, leaving the implication hanging in the air. David remained composed. "There's no mistake, Mrs. Parker. This is my home, and you're trespassing. Please leave." As she gathered her things, she muttered under her breath, "We'll see about that." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Over the next few weeks, Linda's behavior went from annoying to outrageous. One Saturday morning, David woke up to voices and splashing. Looking through his window, he couldn't believe his eyes. Linda had invited 4 of her friends over for a pool party in his backyard. "Ladies, you need to leave immediately," David announced, stepping onto his patio. "This is private property." "Oh, don't be difficult," Linda waved dismissively. "We're just having a little fun. Besides, this pool barely gets any use." Her friends looked uncomfortable, shifting in their designer swimsuits. "Linda told us she had permission," one woman whispered, quickly gathering her things. David maintained his composure. "Mrs. Parker, this is your final warning. The next time you trespass, I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," Linda sneered. "I know everyone at the precinct. My husband plays golf with Captain Reynolds." That afternoon, David installed more security cameras. He had learned from his years on the force, document everything. Within days, the cameras caught Linda testing his gate, peering through his windows, and even attempting to tamper with his pool equipment. Then came the false police report, where Linda called in a complaint about a suspicious man trespassing in his own backyard, which led to the police arriving that fateful afternoon. But David was prepared. He showed the officers his security footage, proving that Linda had been harassing him. The officers left, but David had a plan. He compiled all his footage into a video and posted it online. Within hours, the video went viral on TikTok. Linda Parker, the once respected interior designer, became an internet sensation for all the wrong reasons. Her clients began canceling contracts. Local businesses refused to work with her. She tried to play the victim, but the evidence was overwhelming. Her reputation was in ruins. Eventually, with her business collapsing and her social life in shambles, Linda packed up and left the neighborhood. Meanwhile, David became a well-liked figure in the community, hosting pool parties for his neighbors and turning his once contentious home into a place of laughter and friendship. And as he relaxed by his pool one evening, drink in hand, he couldn't help but smile. Justice had been served. Windows and even attempting to use her own key copy from the previous owners. The final straw came when she hosted her book club. David returned from grocery shopping to find 8 women in his backyard, drinking wine and lounging by his pool. This time, he didn't hesitate. He called the police. Officers Davis and Martinez, his former colleagues, arrived within minutes. David, long time no see. Officer Davis greeted him before glancing around. "Oh, it's one of these calls." Linda immediately switched to tears. "Officers, I'm so glad you're here. This man is harassing us. We've always had pool privileges with the previous owners, and he's being completely unreasonable." "Ma'am," Officer Martinez interrupted, his tone firm. "Mr. Turner was one of our best officers. If he says you're trespassing, you're trespassing. Please leave before we have to make this official." As the women hurried out, Linda's face turned red with humiliation. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You don't belong here, and I'll make sure everyone knows it." Linda's campaign against David took a darker turn. Suddenly, anonymous complaints about his unkempt yard flooded the HOA, despite his lawn being in pristine condition. His morning newspaper started disappearing, and mysterious, concerned neighbors posted on local forums about suspicious activity at his address. But David hadn't spent years in law enforcement without learning a thing or two about gathering evidence. His security cameras caught Linda stealing his newspaper at 6 a.m., photographing his house at odd hours, and even sprinkling plant killer on his prized roses under the cover of darkness. During the monthly HOA meeting, Linda played her biggest card yet. "I'm concerned about property values," she announced, shooting a pointed glance at David. "Some recent changes in the neighborhood have made my potential clients uncomfortable." David calmly stood up, phone in hand. "Interesting you should mention property values, Mrs. Parker. Would you like to explain this footage of you vandalizing my garden last Tuesday at 11:47 p.m.? The room fell silent as he played the crystal-clear video. Linda's face turned pale, but she quickly recovered. "I was checking for suspicious activity. Someone's been damaging properties in the neighborhood." "Yes," David replied coolly. "And now we all know who that someone is." That evening, David discovered his pool water had been tampered with, filled with dish soap that would take days to filter out. As he watched the bubbles float across his once pristine pool, a plan began forming in his mind. If Linda wanted to play games with his pool, maybe it was time to give her exactly what she wanted, with a little twist. He remembered a conversation with an old colleague about a case involving a non-toxic, temporary dye used in pool maintenance, the kind that only activates when it comes into contact with specific chemicals found in cosmetics and sunscreen, the kind that would take several days to fade from skin. For the first time since this nightmare began, David smiled. Sometimes, the best way to handle a bully isn't to fight fire with fire. It's to fight fire with a perfectly legal, completely harmless, but absolutely unforgettable lesson in karma. David did his research carefully. The dye he ordered was completely safe, used by professional pool maintenance companies to detect leaks. The best part? It only reacted with certain chemicals found in expensive sunscreens and cosmetics, the kind Linda and her friends slathered on before their unauthorized swims. He tested it first in a small bucket with some of Linda's favorite brand of sunscreen, which she had carelessly left behind on one of his pool chairs. The result was perfect, a bright, unmistakable green that would take at least a week to fade naturally. Not harmful, not permanent, just incredibly embarrassing. The timing couldn't have been better. Through the neighborhood grapevine, David learned that Linda was planning another unauthorized pool party that weekend, a small gathering to support local real estate values. Sure enough, on Saturday afternoon, Linda and her friends waltzed into his backyard like they owned the place. David watched from inside as they applied their expensive lotions, laughing and sipping wine before jumping into the water. Minutes later, the screaming started. One by one, Linda and her friends climbed out of the pool, their skin stained a deep, humiliating green. Panic set in as they tried to scrub it off, but the dye had already done its job. Phones were out. Pictures and videos were being taken. The moment was too good to miss. By the time Linda realized what had happened, it was too late. Someone had already uploaded the footage to TikTok, where it quickly went viral. Within hours, the entire neighborhood, and soon, the entire internet, was laughing at the Green Lady of Houston. Linda's reputation as a sophisticated interior designer was destroyed. Clients canceled contracts, real estate partners distanced themselves, and she became a walking punchline. Humiliated and unable to recover from the public embarrassment, Linda eventually packed up and moved away, hoping to escape the scandal. Meanwhile, David became something of a neighborhood legend. No longer isolated by Linda's smear campaign, he started hosting community gatherings by his now infamous pool. Neighbors who had once kept their distance warmed up to him, and the once divided community came together in a way it never had before. And so, with Linda gone and the neighborhood more united than ever, David finally got to enjoy the dream home he had worked so hard for. The best part? No more uninvited guests in his pool. Linda told everyone. Code for, let's make the new neighbor uncomfortable. But David was ready. He meticulously prepared by installing 3 additional hidden cameras around his luxurious villa's pool, ensuring every possible angle was covered. He carefully added the dye to the water in the exact concentration recommended by the manufacturer. To the naked eye, the pool remained crystal clear and inviting. That evening, David watched from his window as Linda paced her backyard, gesturing animatedly while on a phone call. Yes, he's usually gone all day on Saturdays, she said loudly enough for David to hear. Trust me, it'll be fine. Bring your best swimsuit. David smirked. He packed his car the next morning, making sure Linda saw him leave. But instead of driving away, he parked around the corner and quietly returned through the side gate to his home office, which had a perfect view of the pool. His security app pinged. Right on schedule, Linda was testing the back gate. But this time, David felt no anger, only anticipation. He settled into his chair, phone in hand, ready to record karma in action. Precisely at 2 p.m., Linda made her grand entrance. She sauntered through David's gate like she owned the place, followed by 6 of her friends, all carrying expensive beach bags and wearing designer swimsuits. With practiced efficiency, they set up their little party, chilled champagne, gourmet snacks, and a Bluetooth speaker playing soft jazz. Ladies, welcome to our Saturday sanctuary, Linda announced, raising her glass. What the new owner doesn't know won't hurt him. The women giggled, hesitant at first, but quickly won over by the lure of a private pool on a sweltering Houston afternoon. One by one, they slathered on their expensive sunscreen, the exact brands David had tested. Linda was the first to dive in, making an elegant splash. The water's perfect, she called out. Her friends followed, swimming and laughing, completely unaware of the chemical reaction beginning to take effect. It started with Linda's friend, Susan. Linda, is your skin looking different? She asked, staring at her arm in horror. Under the bright afternoon sun, a distinct green tint was spreading. Linda looked down at her own hands and screamed. Her normally fair skin was now a vibrant, unmistakable shade of green, as if she had been dipped in a vat of food coloring. What's happening? She shrieked. Panic erupted. The women scrambled out of the pool, screaming and clutching their designer towels. Their expensive foundation was now streaked with green, their carefully manicured hands looking like they had been dunked in a St. Patrick's Day dye bath. My daughter's wedding is next week, one woman wailed, examining her emerald-colored legs. I'm supposed to be in the photos. Linda stood in shock, dripping and furious. This was deliberate, she sputtered, scanning the area wildly. That's when she spotted one of the cameras, its small red light blinking cheerfully. The exodus that followed could have been an Olympic sprinting event. 6 green-tinted women bolted through the neighborhood in their designer swimsuits, leaving wet footprints on the sidewalk as horrified onlookers watched in confusion. But the real spectacle was just beginning. David had edited the footage flawlessly. The video opened with clips of Linda's repeated trespassing incidents, followed by the chaotic pool party disaster, all set to the same smooth jazz they had played at the gathering. Within hours, the video was viral on TikTok. Millions of people watched as Linda and her friends turned into human chameleons, their reactions ranging from horror to disbelief to sheer embarrassment. Local news stations picked up the story, running headlines like, "Trespassing Linda gets green with envy." The video not only showed her unauthorized pool parties, but also security footage of her vandalism attempts and eventual transformation into a bright green mess. The fallout was immediate. Linda's interior design business took a massive hit. Her clients, horrified by the viral scandal, began canceling appointments. Her social media pages were flooded with green emojis and mocking comments. Potential customers questioned whether they could trust someone who trespassed on private property. Unable to escape the ridicule, Linda eventually stopped taking clients altogether. The once proud designer, who had built her career on appearances, found herself humiliated beyond repair. Within weeks, she quietly packed up and left, her reputation in ruins. Meanwhile, David didn't just enjoy his well-earned victory, he made the most of it. To celebrate Linda's departure, he threw a massive neighborhood pool party, inviting his actual neighbors, the ones who respected property lines. The once divided community bonded over the hilarious story, and David's home became a central gathering place for future summer get-togethers. Sometimes, the best way to handle a bully isn't with anger. It's with a well-planned, perfectly legal, and utterly unforgettable lesson in karma. By Monday morning, Linda Parker's interior design firm had released a statement. "We pride ourselves on professionalism and integrity. The actions shown in the video do not reflect our company's values." But the damage was done. The neighborhood WhatsApp group was buzzing with activity. Residents who had stayed silent during Linda's campaign against David Turner suddenly spoke up. She did the same thing to the Millers last year. Remember when she tried to get the neighborhood kids' lemonade stand shut down? The floodgates had opened. But the most satisfying moment came when Linda, still sporting a distinct mint hue, attempted damage control. She posted a video trying to explain her side, but her green-tinged face only made it go viral for all the wrong reasons. "I was just trying to maintain community standards," she insisted, her emerald complexion glowing under the camera lights. Instead of sympathy, the internet erupted with comparisons to a frustrated Wicked Witch of the West. David didn't say a word. He didn't have to. He simply enjoyed his pool, waving cheerfully whenever he spotted a green-tinted figure peeking through neighboring curtains. Linda's attempts to salvage her reputation only made things worse. Her lawyer sent David a cease and desist letter demanding he remove the video. David's response was simple, a compilation of her repeated trespassing incidents, complete with timestamps and documented police reports. "You can't prove the pool dye was meant for us specifically," Linda's lawyer argued in a follow-up email. David's security footage, showing Linda stealing his newspaper and vandalizing his garden, quickly ended that discussion. The neighborhood's dynamic shifted dramatically. People who had once avoided eye contact with David now stopped to chat. Mrs. Rodriguez from across the street brought over her famous empanadas. "I should have spoken up sooner," she admitted. "Linda reported my Christmas decorations to the HOA last year because they were too ethnic." The Johnson family next door finally shared their story about Linda trying to get their children's basketball hoop removed, claiming it decreased property values. Even Linda's closest friends began to distance themselves, especially since some of them were still sporting a faint green tinge. Linda's final attempt at revenge backfired spectacularly. She tried to organize a neighborhood meeting to discuss dangerous chemical usage in pools. Only 3 people showed up, each wearing green ribbons in silent support of David. The cherry on top came when Linda's husband was overheard at the local golf club complaining to his friends. "Do you know how hard it is to book clients when your wife is literally green? She can't even meet with homeowners right now. People keep asking if she's feeling sick." David maintained a professional demeanor through it all. When reporters asked for a comment, he simply said, "Everyone is welcome to use my pool. They just need to ask permission first." His small smile spoke volumes. 2 weeks later, a for sale sign appeared in front of Linda's house. The last traces of green had finally faded from her skin, but her reputation was permanently stained. She started taking the long way around the block to avoid passing David's house, especially during his weekend pool parties. Those gatherings became a neighborhood highlight. Unlike Linda's exclusive clique, David hosted them properly, with written invitations, safety rules, and his famous grilled ribs. Children splashed happily while parents chatted, creating the kind of community Linda had claimed to protect but had actually damaged. "You know," said Tom from 2 doors down as he helped David set up for a Labor Day barbecue. "I've lived here for 20 years, and this is the first time I've really known my neighbors." The Rodriguez kids started a running joke, tiptoeing exaggeratedly past Linda's house in swim gear, calling out in staged whispers, "Don't tell Linda." Even their parents couldn't help but laugh. Real estate agents showing Linda's house had to explain to potential buyers why the current owner was selling so suddenly. But one thing was clear. Houston's most exclusive suburban neighborhood was finally rid of its self-appointed enforcer, and the community had never been stronger. The story had become such a local legend that realtors were legally required to disclose it. "No, the pool incident won't affect the property," they assured concerned buyers. The die was completely temporary. Linda made one final appearance at an HOA meeting before moving out. She had prepared a speech about the neighborhood's decline, but before she could begin, someone in the back started humming "It's Not Easy Being Green." The room erupted into barely concealed laughter. Flustered, her face turning a shade of red that clashed magnificently with the last hints of green, Linda fled the room. The day her moving truck pulled away, David raised a glass of lemonade in his backyard, not to celebrate her departure, but to appreciate how standing up to a bully had brought the neighborhood closer. A year later, David's pool remained the heart of the community. The new owners of Linda's former house, an interracial couple with twin daughters, fit in perfectly. The girls had joined the swim team, and David often helped them practice on weekends. Visitors sometimes noticed the small framed photo near his pool gate, showing a group of people running through the neighborhood, their skin an unmistakable shade of green. If asked, David would simply smile and say, "That's a reminder that karma has a way of making a splash." The security cameras were still there, but these days, they captured different scenes: birthday parties, swimming lessons, and neighbors enjoying warm summer nights together. HOA meetings had become shorter, friendlier, and noticeably free of petty complaints about property values. Then, last week, David received an amusing email. A local news station had discovered that Linda, now living in another state, was making waves again, this time demanding access to someone else's tennis court. He chuckled, marked the email as read, and stepped outside to enjoy his pool. As he floated peacefully in the crystal-clear water, David reflected on how the best revenge isn't always about getting even. Sometimes, it's about showing others how to stand their ground with dignity. His pool had become more than just a luxury. It was a symbol of resilience and unity. If you've ever dealt with someone like Linda, remember, sometimes, the best way to handle entitled behavior is to let karma do its thing. Just make sure you have good security cameras, and maybe keep some pool dye handy. Drop a comment if you think Linda got exactly what she deserved, and share your own story of standing up to entitled behavior. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of sweet, satisfying karma. The value of standing your ground. In life, we often encounter people who try to control or manipulate us, whether through power, influence, or intimidation. The stories of individuals standing up to unjust HOA leaders teach us an important lesson. Knowing your rights and having the courage to defend them can change everything. Many people assume that authority figures always have the final say, but the truth is, rules and laws exist to protect everyone. When someone oversteps their boundaries, whether it's a neighbor, an HOA, or even a workplace superior, being informed and assertive can prevent unnecessary hardship. The key is preparation. Document everything, seek legal advice when needed, and never be afraid to push back against unfair treatment. For older adults, this lesson is especially meaningful. With years of wisdom and experience, you understand the importance of fairness and respect. Whether it's protecting your home, finances, or personal boundaries, standing firm against wrongful authority can ensure peace of mind and a better quality of life. Strength isn't always about confrontation. It's about knowing when to fight for what's right. In the end, justice prevails when good people refuse to be silenced.